Have you ever heard of a warrior so feared that her name alone sent shivers down the spines of European soldiers? A woman whose presence on the battlefield meant swift justice for her people and ruthless vengeance upon her enemies. You may know of Apache leaders like Geronimo and Cochise, but history has often overlooked one of the greatest female warriors to ever ride into battle. She was not just a fighter, she was a strategist, a protector, a living legend. The Europeans feared her, the US Army hunted her, and her people called her their shield against extinction. Her name was Lozen. Born into the Cheyenne Apache band in the early 19th century, Lozen never fit within the quiet confines of domestic life. Women were expected to gather food, prepare meals, weave baskets, and care for children, while men trained as warriors and hunters, defending their people from enemy raids. But Lozen was different. From a young age, Lozen showed extraordinary athleticism, intelligence, and fearlessness. While other children played, she practiced tracking, hunting, and horseback riding, mastering skills that even experienced warriors took years to develop. She could ride bareback at full speed, fire arrows with deadly accuracy, and move swiftly and silently across the desert, leaving no trace of her presence. Unlike many warriors who had to learn these techniques over time, Lozen seemed born for battle. Her brother Victorio, one of the most respected Apache leaders, recognized her rare gift. While others saw a girl defying her role, he saw a weapon, a fighter with a warrior's heart, someone who possessed the ability to sense danger before it arrived. Lozen's skill in battle was so uncanny that some believe she had a supernatural connection to the spirit world, allowing her to detect approaching enemies through visions. Her name, meaning dexterous horse thief, would soon strike fear into the hearts of Mexican, American, and European soldiers alike. But her story was only just beginning. The battles ahead would test her strength, her loyalty, and her unwavering commitment to the survival of her people. The Apache people had roamed their ancestral lands for centuries, living in harmony with the rugged terrain that provided them with food, shelter, and identity. Their way of life was so deeply tied to the mountains, deserts, and rivers of the Southwest, a land they understood better than anyone. But their world began to change with the arrival of foreign invaders, first the Spanish, then the Mexicans, and finally the Americans. Each wave of newcomers brought broken promises, conflict, and the slow erosion of Apache freedom. The Apache had seen it all before, false promises scrawled on fragile paper. Their land was stolen, their families were torn apart, and when the US government forced them onto the San Carlos reservation, it wasn't an act of diplomacy, it was an act of destruction. But Victorio and Lozen refused to accept this fate. For them, submission was not an option. If the world demanded their extinction, they would answer with resistance, and Lozen was built for war. She would rather die fighting than live in chains. Lozen was not just a fighter, she was a tactician, a leader, a warrior whose strength and cunning made her a force to be reckoned with. But her power was said to come from something beyond skill and into the realm of the supernatural. Before every battle, she would raise her hands to the sky, close her eyes, and concentrate. The air around her seemed to still, as if waiting. And then, with a certainty that sent chills through those who watched, she would declare the direction from which the enemy would come. She never guessed, she never doubted, and she was never wrong. Warriors relied on her visions, using them to set ambushes, to evade capture, to strike before the enemy even knew they were in danger. It was an advantage so powerful that soldiers, both Mexican and American, grew to fear what they could not explain. But war does not grant mercy, even to the bravest. The battlefield is ruthless, and no warrior, no matter how gifted, can fight forever. Even Lozen, strong, cunning, and fearless, would one day face an enemy she could not outrun. In 1880, after years of relentless fighting, Victorio and his warriors found themselves trapped in the unforgiving mountains of Chihuahua, Mexico. Their enemies, a battalion of well-armed Mexican soldiers, had studied their movements, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment had come. The battle was brutal. Bullets rained down as the Apache warriors fought with everything they had. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and exhausted, yet they refused to surrender. Victorio, the fierce and unyielding leader of the Cheyenne Apache, led his warriors into the fray, his war cries echoing through the mountains. But the enemy was relentless. One by one, Apache fighters fell. The earth was stained with their blood. Then, in the heart of the chaos, Victorio was struck down. For Lozen, the loss was more than just the death of her brother. It was the death of a leader, a protector, a mentor, the very person who had guided her through war and survival. It was as if a part of her soul had been ripped away. But grief did not break her. Instead, it fueled her. She did not flee. She did not mourn in silence. Instead, she tightened her grip on her rifle, clenched her jaw, and swore an oath. Victorio's fight would become her own. His mission to defend their people, their land, their way of life would not die with him. Lozen knew she could not do it alone. She needed an ally as fierce as Victorio. She turned to the one man who had defied the US and Mexican forces for years, Geronimo. By now, Lozen's name had spread far beyond the deserts and mountains of the Apache lands. She was no longer just a warrior of the Cheyenne Apache, she had become a legend. To the US Army, she was a ghost, slipping through their grasp time and time again. Soldiers whispered about her uncanny ability to predict enemy movements, as if she had a sixth sense guiding her through the chaos of war. They would set traps, only to find them empty, their prey long gone. Scouts returned with shaken expressions, reporting sightings of a lone rider vanishing into the dust, her rifle always within reach. To the Mexican government, Lozen was something far worse, a relentless nightmare. Mexican forces had seen Apache warriors before, but none like her. She did not negotiate, did not falter, and did not retreat unless it was a tactical necessity. Her raids were swift and devastating, leaving towns in ruin and soldiers too terrified to sleep. Alongside Geronimo, she waged war in the final desperate campaigns of the Apache resistance. They freed captives, outwitted generals, and made the very mountains seem alive with rebellion. But the enemy had something the Apache didn't: endless numbers, endless weapons, and an endless supply of resources. No matter how many victories Lozen and Geronimo claimed, their enemies kept coming. And so, after years of defying the impossible, Lozen and Geronimo were forced to surrender. The last Apache resistance had finally been broken, not by skill or strategy, but by the overwhelming numbers of the enemy. Imprisoned in a Florida cell, far from the land she fought so hard to defend, she would never see her homeland again. Lozen met her end not on the battlefield, not from a bullet, not from a blade, but from tuberculosis, a disease she could not fight, an enemy she could not outrun. But even in death, her legend lived on. To the Apache, Lozen remains a symbol of fierce defiance and unbreakable will. To the European and American soldiers who once hunted her, she's a reminder that no empire can ever truly conquer the spirit of the Apache people. Lozen was more than a warrior. She was a shield, a protector, a force of nature, and history will never forget her name. If you find this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold truths of women in history. Thank you for watching She Serves.